Hey, right. In a few days, I'm going to bring your guns, and this will be my meta review of that tournament. Here we go. So, the meta of Bring Your Guns. The event itself is 1100 points. It's a single generic platoon, which was very limiting to what you could bring because actually spending more than 1,000 points on a single platoon can become difficult if you want to go optimized choices. There's 23 players, I think, maybe with a TO playing as well. Something around there. And we're playing 5 games over 2 days with a 16 order dice cap, which again limits what you can do with an order dice cap and high points. You're going to have to spend your points somewhere, right? So one of the things that I thought would happen was that a lot of players would take expensive units, and some players have. There's like a couple of Death Star units. I myself am using a unit, like an infantry unit, that costs more than 200 points. So there's a couple of Death Star-ish choices being taken. There's even a Panther going, and that will be interesting in itself because what will happen? Will it actually work? The meta of this, with the point dice cap and the high point costs and a single platoon, I think becomes really interesting. Lots of things can happen. Now, order dice. The order dice are between 13 and 16, with very few lists having less than 15 order dice. The average is 15.1. Where we have 14 lists that have 15 order dice and 5 that are at 16. I had actually expected more people to be at exactly 16, but it's right around there anyway. 16 for me is a good place to be if you want to go optimized at 1100 points. But it can be difficult to spend all the points if you're running a single generic platoon to get all the order dice in there, because there's only so many choices that you can take, right? So in that respect, it's maybe expected that 15 would be a good average. Now the nation spread is slightly off from what I had expected. I had expected there to be a lot more British, but maybe it's the pack, maybe it's the players going, I don't know, but what we're seeing is we have 6 American armies going. So the most common army is Americans, the second most common army is Germans. So we're always seeing some Germans, but the second most common army, that was a real surprise to me, because the 2 top armies of the meta right now is, of course, Brits and then the Soviets, and they are not the 2 most taken armies here. There are 4 Soviet armies being taken, some of them by really good players, so I expect to see them do well. And then there are 2 Polish armies going. One of them is the TO Jan Petersen, who has just painted up a Polish army. And then the second one is the one that we need to watch out for, because that is Michael Fie, who has been playing Polish competitively for quite a while now, and he's one of maybe 2 people in the world I think can do it well. So I'm expecting great things from him. 2 British armies are going, and only one of them is a Gurkha army. So the Gurkhas are not really participating that much. Then we have a Finnish army, we have a Japanese army, we have a partisan army, me, and an Italian army as well. So the spread here is quite big. We have 9 different nations, which I love. That is amazing. If that's the pack, then we've found something that's golden. If it's just because people want to bring different stuff, then we're just being good people. Builds. So what about the builds? I've been saying for a while now that barbecuing is out. And I am still seeing that. The most common build is what I call mixed bag, where you have a little bit of everything, and that bleeds into skirmish lists, because a lot of these lists, these mixed bag lists, are actually American skirmishes. There's also variation of this that's called the greatest hits, where you take 2 of everything that's good, which is sort of a mixed bag with redundancy in it. And a 10 of these lists have mixed bag elements or skirmish elements or greatest hit elements. So that is the most common type of how to build a list, basically. There are only 4 assault lists, one of them being a Gurkha list, one of them the Polish Lancer lists, and then I am counting my own partisan list as well. So that is a little low I mean, I just won the World Championships with an assault list. So if net listing was a thing in bolt action, I had expected more people to bring assault lists. But this shows that net listing is not a thing in bold action. There are 3 faux tank lists, soda tank lists, where you bring a lot of armored vehicles, mostly brain carriers, but there's also one that has a lot of Hanomaks. And 3 motorized, mechanized lists, some of the faux tank lists being doubled up here, where you have a lot of transport that can bring your troops to where they need to go. Only 2 lists are barbecue lists, which was not necessarily a surprise, but it's where I think the meta is going. I think the meta is moving away from barbecuing because I think a lot of, at least the good players, know how to deal with barbecuing. So it will be really interesting to see because both of the players who are bringing barbecue lists are actually kind of good. So we are going to have to see if they can bring back barbecuing. One of them is Pim of the Dutch WTC team, and the other one is David of the Danish WTC team. So both of them know what they're doing. Maybe they can do well with barbecuing still. There are 2 Recce armies, one of them being a Cav army, of course. The other one, the other 2 Polish, there's 2 Polish lists, right? And one of them has a few cavalry, but not all cavalry. So there's also another army that has a lot of Recce vehicles. And then 2 autocannon spam lists, and both of them German, where you have as many autocannons as you can fit in. A Flak-Zwilling makes an appearance. That is a deadly weapon. I really like the autocannon spam mixed bag greatest hits for Germany. I think that's the way to go to build Germany competitively. And I think we're going to see a lot more autocannon spam lists going into the future. I just reviewed Case Blue, and in that, Italy gets a bonus. You re-roll penetration for anything less that has less than 3+ penetration, so that means autocannons. So I think Italian autocannon spam is going to be a thing going into the future. So I expect great things from autocannons. And there are 2 Death Star lists. One of them has a Panther, which is Jonathan Martin. Kudos to you, gentlemen. I really want this to work well. I'm not sure that it will, but if you can make that Panther work, and if anyone can, it should be Jonathan. Jonathan is a hobbyist, is a painter, he's a rivet counter, casual player, but he's been on the WTC team as well, so he knows how to play. He knows how to play to win as well. And he was in the top 5 at Sealand Open, so he knows his stuff. And I really want him to make Death Stars great. We've been trying to work on that for a while to see if anyone can make Death Stars work, and it hasn't really worked yet. But we're giving it another shot here. The other Death Star list, you could argue that my Partisans has a Death Star element with that 200+. I've got a 12-man veteran unit. But there are also one list that has double body armored assault engineers for the Soviets, Death Stars. We have 1 horde list, and it's difficult to build true hordes when you have an ordinance cap and a single platoon. So hordes I had not expected to show up in a massive way. Hordes are also kind of difficult to play. I think that you need to be a dedicated horde player to play hordes well and do well with hordes. But if you are, you can. I mean, look at Manuel, the German team captain. He is amazing with hordes. And we have one forward deploying army. Of course, Michael Christensen, he's still working on his forward deployers. He still believes in them. And I can see why. Although he hasn't won anything yet, this may be his time. Now, the main takeaways for me is that points caps versus organized caps plus a lot of points leads to less stewards. We're not seeing that many stewards, although there are stewards, of course there is. But there could have been a lot more. And that's because people have to spend points, so they are spending points on anti-tank capabilities or more expensive tanks. I'm also taking away that there are no real noob bashers anymore. There are a couple of multi-rocket launchers, but when you're running single platoon, getting double multi-rocket launcher can be done with some German builds, but otherwise it's really difficult to do. You could run an M30 and a Katusha, but then you're missing out on a tank. Maybe not that good. So the noob bashers are out, which is kind of good for the meta as well. Noob bashers can be unfun to play against, I guess. I'm also not seeing Gurkhas. The Gurkhas are gone, more or less. There's one Gurkha army, that's it. So where are the Gurkhas? I don't know. And I think we're seeing a shift in the meta, at least in the Danish meta, towards mixed bag, towards skirmishing. And I'm really hoping that skirmish armies, mixed bag armies will win, so that we can say that that is now a thing in the meta. Because it seems to me that they take a lot more tactical skill, maybe, than mono builds. We'll see. I'm also wondering if cavalry is now a thing. We haven't yet seen the impact of Case Blue, but there are 3 armies that have cavalry at this event. So we're going to see if that suddenly spreads out and becomes a thing. Some people don't believe that cavalry can be good. I personally do, but we will see what happens now. Now, for you to watch, things to look out for. Michael C's forward deploying army. Can he make that work? All forward deployers, like having most of your army forward deploy, could be really powerful. And with Case Blue, there comes out even more good forward deploying units. So is that going to be a thing in the future? Michael Fier's Polish army, of course. That is a really strong army build. Very difficult to use. Can be really glass cannon-ish, so it's difficult, but a really good player may be able to make it work. Then there are my partisans, of course, where I'm attempting for a 5er player. I think I'm a 5er player. Most people evaluate me like that. Can I take a 3 army nation and win? That's the experiment. I don't know. Can I? We'll see. How much does the player matter? How much does the army? I don't know. Then there's Jonathan's Panther Death Star. How is that going to fare? Benny's body armored Death Stars. How are they going to fare? Are they going to get pinned down and not do a thing? And then Anders Olsen's Gurkha Brits, which is sort of the opposite of my experiment. Anders is an okay tournament player. He hasn't won tournaments in Denmark yet, but he's an okay tournament player. He's really good at analyzing the game, especially after the game, so he's a 3-ish, maybe going on a 3.5. Can he take a 4+ army and win with it? That'll be the other, like the opposite of what I'm doing. And then, of course, there's David and Pim's barbecuing. Can they make it work? Do people know how to play against it? Can barbecue come back? We don't know. We will have to see. My predictions are, and this is based on both players, because I know all the players going, at least the top competitive ones. There's a few new players that I haven't been introduced to yet in the Danish scene, but all the competitive players I know. So based on knowing players and knowing the lists, these are my predictions. So these should be really accurate. I hope. I think that Michael Fier and his Polish may take the win. He has 15 order dice, he has TKS, and so many veteran lances. he may be able to take the win, depending on tables and opponents. Then there's Michael Christensen with his Soviets. If he has 15 order dice as well, Scouts, Tank Hunters, and Steward. If he can make that forward deployment win, then I think he could also take a high placement, like second, third, something like that. Danny is the team captain for the Dutch team. He's a really good player. He's bringing skirmishing Americans with a Hellcat, so that is interesting. 15 order dice. I cannot see a tournament where Danny attends where he's not in the top bracket, and his list is, for me, a pretty good list, but not a massively good list. That Hellcat, I'm still not convinced. I know it has done okay. I'm still not convinced that it's as good as a Steward in that slot. But we will see. At least it has a big gun to hunt all those Stewards and maybe even take out Panthers. And then there's Benny. Benny is a top competitive player here in Denmark. He's won tournaments. He's come second, third, and he's been on the WTC team as well. He has a silver medal for that. So Benny should do well. He has 15 order dice Soviets, and they are mechanized engineers in body armor. So that's always interesting to see that build and whether or not people know how to play against it. Anders Olsen, his British, as I've talked about before, they're going to have to go into the top bracket because it's such a competitive army, and Anders is not a bad player at all. So can he make that work? How much will it boost him up? I think personally that he will end up in the top 5, unless he faces off against one of the top 3 players that knocks him back down. And then there's David from the Danish WTC team. I think he can make barbecuing work, especially because he has a lot of recce in his list. 16 order dice Americans with skirmish abilities, barbecue. So it has a lot of moving parts. I think that could really work if his dice don't betray him. Of course, the wild card will have to be me. I am right now, I think, the best player in the world, and at least the best player in Denmark. Arguably, I'm not the Danish champion right now, but I didn't attend the Danish nationals last time. Can I do something with a decidedly average army? Can I pull myself into the top bracket? That could shake around where all these things go. So that is a wild card. I'm not comfortable evaluating myself in that respect. So I don't know. I know that I recently had a training game against Michael Fee. He's Polish and lost it. So maybe I can push myself up in the top 5, 6, 7. But I am not comfortable in predicting where I'll go. It's a huge question mark for me. So that is the meta of Bring Your Guns, and I am really looking forward to testing it all out and seeing what happens. Stay tuned, and I will give you the results. Cheers.